So I'm Prankit. I sit in the intelligent automation team at Ingram Micro. We essentially look after emerging technologies and solutions that sort of primarily fall into the space of IOT, AI, and RPA, or robotics process automation. Really looking forward to this conversation with yourself. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
So Jeff Palfreyman, Access Communications, Key Account Manager, digital transformation enthusiast, but this will come across hopefully throughout the podcast. Thanks very much for the invite as well.
I know that I think just before we started rolling, you were sort of telling me a little bit about how Access and how Access cameras are kind of branching out of just sort of the image and video space into kind of other use cases and outcomes.
Yeah.
And I was kind of very intrigued. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
If we could go on all day with this one, it's a real sort of pet passion of mine, is seeing our devices sort of breach out aside of that traditional, if you like, traditional security space. I use that word really sparingly because obviously it's been a sort of evolving thing for quite some time. But if you take some of the applications we're now sort of seeing that our products go into now, they're so much, for me, more exciting. We see the use of analytics. Everything's going to boil down to the data. So there's a real story about how we use data. So we collect data really well. So in an IoT environment, our devices are essentially a sensor. So all of a sudden, it's about actually, are we collecting good quality data, and what we do with that data defines how smart that application becomes. So it's definitely an exciting time, and we've done some, like I say, some mega impressive projects. Can probably give some real good examples as we go on through the conversation.
Oh, that sounds very fascinating. So I know that in our world, when we talk about IoT, we're usually talking about a range of devices and sensors that are kind of interconnected in some way, wired or wireless. And sometimes you're kind of bringing some of that data together. And I think there's an element of, which you kind of touched upon, which is like using essentially a camera as a sensor as well.
Yeah.
So to me, I kind of see there's two parallel opportunities. One is, integrating the cameras with kind of some of the sensor suites that you could have. So like a vape sensor that could maybe trigger a camera recording or
Correct.
something of that nature. But then there's also the opportunity of using the camera itself as a sensor.
Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about the two approaches and like what direction Access are headed in?
So one of the sort of founding, if you like, mottos of Access is to always be open, and that's within the devices. So we don't want closed protocol devices. That we don't see that as fruitful for our business. So for us, it's about actually, we've got a lot of information. We collect a lot of information on the edge, and we want to hand that out freely. Security permissions and things aside, but it's available. But equally, we can read as well. So it's that read-write thing that we've got going on. So we can, a couple of examples, recent thing we're working on is the ability to talk to OPC UA. So we can talk directly to machines. So in that example, let's imagine a production line, for argument's sake. We've got a camera that can monitor the production line. So let's say a box falls off the production line. We've got analytics that can then say, okay, something's appeared that wasn't there a few minutes ago. So we can pass that information on. But equally, we can read the stats of the production line. So we can, via OPC UA, read the operational efficiency of that machine from inside the machine. So the machine may say, I'm at 60% operational efficiency. So then we've got an eyeball in the real world to actually monitor that machine and say, okay, yeah, actually it doesn't look like it's functioning properly, or maybe it's running a little bit hot, and we've got a thermal camera. So if the inside of the machine says, okay, I'm a little bit hot, then a thermal camera can almost verify that, like, okay, externally you're hot as well. So that is reason for somebody to go and check. So these aren't traditional security applications, but they add so much more into that manufacturing process as well.
No, that's pretty cool. So I guess, talking about the use cases, there's probably like infinite use cases.
No, without a doubt.
Using, yeah. Are they like, I think, particular kind of market segments or use cases that you're seeing sort of be a bit more popular right now?
Yeah, I mean, we've got sort of focus segments where essentially there's a lot of quick wins. There's some of the stuff that we're releasing, it's an immediate fit and an immediate answer to a lot of problems. So smart manufacturing, huge at the moment. We've got smart cities, obviously. Smart cities are a nice crossover between that tradition. I keep saying traditional, the security space, but actually we do more with that. So we start and collect, let's say, people counting, for argument's sake. So all of a sudden those decisions, so we're enabling empowerment in the decision-making process and automation to that. So we can count people, we can count cars, we can count trucks, so on and so forth. But again, just counting them, okay, that's fantastic. But historically using that data, that is powerful, because all of a sudden you can actually make decisions on pedestrianising a road, for example. You might want to close down a road and just have people. Is there enough people, and is there so few cars using that road that decision makes sense for the council? So that's where we're going. It's all about data-driven decision-making, really.
And it's a good point, because I think, the outcome often gets lost in the tech conversation.
Yeah,
But, you can do all these amazing things, but at the end of the day, what is the actual business case? Like,
He's so right, because if I sit with an end user, the worst thing I can do is start talking about what we can do. It's actually what are your
art of the possible.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the art of the possible is a great conversation, but to a generic audience, because actually people know their industries and their businesses more than we ever can pretend to. So we say, what give us some problems, tell us what is a real pain to you, and let's take that away and see if we can build something around. That's what it really is about, a solution sell, as opposed to a device off a shelf. It's actually that integration piece. It's either going to be something we can do off the shelf or we can't. There's not really a hybrid. So when we can't, it's third parties involved, it's middleware, it's a bigger picture, and for me it's really exciting. But it's about finding these people and networking with these partners, which is kind of our transition period at the moment. We have a set number of partners who they deliver some really nice applications, but this is in its infancy because of the dawn of AI and so on and so forth. It's just a mad world out there, and it's really exciting times to sort of say, okay, I didn't know you existed yesterday, but what you do is quite special. And actually, if we merge our sensor on top of what you do, together we can answer a problem.
No, that's actually really good to hear as well, because I think what we've learned, so, our team, we work very closely with our channel partners as well as, with our vendors and technology partners.
Yeah.
And, there's a couple of different elements here. I think there's one element where you're trying to bring together all these different technologies from different manufacturers and build it into a single end-to-end solution. And what we've done here at Ingram Micro is build these range of services that we can support our channel partners with to help them bring some of this together. So they don't need to necessarily make the investment to sort of learn all of this and adapt and essentially build these skills in-house. They can kind of rely on us and then slowly kind of build their own service wraps. And I think the other element that we work very closely with our partners to support them is sort of that front-ending piece with the end user, because like you said, it's kind of very critical to get in and speak with the end user and
definitely
sort of understand, right, what are their challenges? How do they kind of see some of this tech fitting into their world? But it really starts with that outcome, right? What are the operational challenges or security challenges? What are the blockers? And then we'll kind of work with our channel partners as well as our vendors to kind of bring that solution to life. And I think seeing that sort of approach being mirrored in the access world, it kind of resonates very well with...
It is. It's really good to hear, because I couldn't agree more. It's seldom do we have all of the tools in the toolkit to answer the problem. Like basic problems, no problem. But it's when a solution becomes, needs that third party. Okay, Access as a company, we're almost too big to address these individual problems, but that's where that ecosystem comes in. So we have that ecosystem where we can reach out and say, okay, we have a specialist for that, and their 9 to 5, Monday to Friday job is to work on this particular analytic that, frankly, it's not something that we can copy and paste in enough environments to take on as Access as much as we would love to. So, and then you're relying heavily on the likes of you guys. So Ingram bring that IT expertise into the party. So, all of a sudden we've got the full package, because it's, we've heard horror stories of things falling over due to language barriers. So I heard a story about an analytics company, fantastic analytics, but the support was in Spanish and they didn't speak English. Simple as that. But on the website, you look and you say, oh, they're fantastic. They look like the right fit. But in practice, it was a sticking block. It didn't work very well. So, it's basically the more sort of tech minds we get together in a room around the solution, the better, really, because I don't think we can do everything ourselves. I really don't. I think IoT is about expanding, handshake with different devices and working together. So.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, because there's a lot of collaboration needed in IoT, and I think the initial approaches that companies took was very much that kind of walled garden approach, and we do see that kind of slow down the IoT market, and I think it's in a point now where it's kind of opening back up and companies are starting to work with each other and realize it is a collaborative effort of bringing a multitude of things together. So can you tell me a bit more about like the approach to the ecosystem? So there's elements that Access are working on and capabilities you're building into your cameras and protocols, and then you also have maybe ISVs or partners that are maybe helping with the analytics and bringing that data together. How does that ecosystem work? What's the strategy?
We will always sort of focus around, like I've used this already, but copy and paste sort of scenarios. So if we think something's good for 85% of the partner program that we have, we'll probably take that analytic in-house. So people counting, line crossing, these kinds of analytics are really safe analytics, if you like. But then you'll get something that maybe is not going to be as used, but it has a place. So that's where we rely heavily on the ecosystem. And to be honest, there's other applications within the ecosystem that partners do just really well, but differently to us. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. We're not here to sit and say you have to use our analytics or somebody else's. It's what fits the application. As long as the end user wins, we all win, kind of thing. So the ecosystem, essentially, if you imagine just an app store, an iOS app store, an Android app store, that's kind of what we've created. So if you go onto the website, you can quite comfortably see what works with what camera, and what application, what are the deliverables from each application. So that ecosystem, it's expanding all the time, but we've got some real solid partners in there. And to be honest, I'm seeing more and more the use of the ecosystem as a necessity, as opposed to it was one-off, maybe, okay, I need to find something a bit out there, so then now it is very much 50-50. Okay, these guys do something, they do it really well, I think you should use that application. And obviously the fundamental differences are probably that the analytics we do generally are license free, and I say generally because there's a very, very, very small number that are licensable, but that's where the solution can change, because some obviously people that create these analytics, they license these analytics, it's an additional cost on, but again it's about weighing the cost of the analytics versus the value, and quite often it's a very quick return of investment conversation. Certainly outside that security space, we see the return of investment conversation is actually the key conversation to have. If that process can be sort of tweaked and save X amount, are you okay to spend Y on the hardware and the licensing? It's usually, as long as everything usually has a proof of concept against it in this industry as well. I don't know if you've noticed yourself. You'll talk about the art of the possible to answer a problem, but nobody believes talk, and rightfully so, because how many times do you hear that? Oh yeah, it said it should do it, but it doesn't. So we're very much a part of, okay, let's get out there, let's work with these people, end users, prove that something works, and then we'll have that conversation.
Yeah, no, that is an excellent point about the POCs, right? And I think there's an element where a lot of these end users and even our channel partners, they, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, they tried something in the space and maybe they were burnt by it for various reasons. Yeah. So there's some skepticism around kind of the term IoT. Yes. And sometimes we steer away from even using that term. Yeah. And we're just talking about the outcomes. And I think, with POCs as well, what we've seen is a lot of times the projects can get stuck in what we call POC land. So
I couldn't agree more as well. They
want to see an element of something working, and then the end user's like, oh, can we also add this to it, and can we also see this? So we've tried to take the approach of we always try and define firstly what is the business case, what's the ROI, and then when we're looking at a POC, what is it that the customer actually wants to get out of it, right? Is it more of a sort of a POV, like a proof of value, or is it a technical kind of pilot where they want to see that the technology actually works? Is it a hybrid of kind of seeing the technology works, but that also they can get their ROI? So we try and document that early on and almost have like a checkbox of success criteria. So the customer also knows what's happening, and we like I said, we work very closely with our channel partners to build all of this. So that their end user is very happy, and they're happy to proceed on that basis. And I mean, we've seen that has tried to move the needle more towards then going from a POC and getting to those larger scale deployments, and not just being stuck with POC. But I'm curious about your kind of experience with that, and what sort of approach maybe Axis have taken.
So and I love hearing this, because it just verifies that it's not just us. The POC land, I think I'll use that again, because it's so easy to fall into.
By the way, I heard that somewhere else. I can't remember where it was. I'll take credit.
But honestly, like, we spend a lot of time on POCs and keeping on top of them. It's a management process in itself, because the goalposts are ever expanding, because again, you're kind of shown somebody something that they either didn't know is possible or didn't believe is possible almost, and then when they start to see, okay, it is, what else can it do? So okay, well, actually, while you're on, can I just have, while we've proven that and it's really good and I really like it, can we now move the POC to the other end of the factory, because I've got a new thing I want you. So you can get stuck in. To be honest, we're not in a position where we want to say no, we can't. Like, for us, Axis, we're as interested to learn on it from a POC as the end user. And again, we sell success stories like that. That, you know, there's nothing better than sitting in a meeting and going, brilliant, I've done that before, I've done exactly that, and yes, it works. That's a great feeling. But until you've done that, you don't have that in the locker. So then it's okay, we need to work with, you know, anybody who's doing these POCs to ensure that we get them over the line. So it is, and then when I refer to it as a management process, we do our part, but then our partner, so we don't physically install, for anyone that isn't familiar with Access, we don't physically go and install the camera. We have a partner program and a vetted installer base. So they will go and physically do the install side of it. Usually we work hand in hand, so we'll be there ensuring the camera's optimized to the best of its ability, and they will physically do the cabling, the infrastructure, and the install. So it's kind of, we'll work together to try and sort of make a success of the POC. But there is a point, I think, where usually it's not our conversation, it's normally an installer who's, because again, our route to market being through the installer, they will have the conversation and say, okay, it's probably now we need to stop the POC and work out, is this valuable? Because, like I say, POC land, which I'm definitely going to steal, it's a place that can go on forever.
Yeah, and you know, when we're working with like a new partner, a new customer, we always try and, we've got this sort of plan that we present to them. We kind of explain what is a sales cycle in this world and the different sort of milestones you have to achieve. And, you know, we've got a team of consultants that can kind of go in and speak with the end user. And we're always very insistent as well that for the first few projects, we work alongside the partner. So, you know, the partner is still very much in control of everything, but we're sort of right there, you know, it's just a step behind them, sort of supporting them and guiding them through the process to try and get to those first few projects, which are not just a pilot or POC, but sort of a full-scale deployment.
Agree.
Because I think there's a huge kind of partner education piece that, you know, we're trying to support. And I think the other side of it is, I don't know if you're finding this as well, is that the end users are getting increasingly aware of these kinds of solutions. You know, they're coming to our partners. I mean, we've had a lot of leads from our channel partners where they've got an end user asking something, you know, that they might not know about necessarily. But then, you know, it is where the industry is headed, and the end users are kind of learning that these things are out there and they can use them. And whether we're talking about computer vision or we're talking about integration, you know, with sensors and devices, that we've got schools coming out looking for like vape sensors and how they can integrate them with security devices and send out alerts and things. So I'm wondering if you're kind of seeing the same where there's like the end user market, or are you also having to educate the end users?
To be honest, it's good to hear. And I guess when people reach out to Ingram, they're probably hopefully from that sort of IT background. So we do have probably a split in the program. So we do have that level where they come in and they say, okay, I've seen this elsewhere, I want something similar, or I've heard this is achievable. But also the education piece is massive for us at the moment. So we do have, I would say, another half of our end users who we go and spend time with them. And I'll reference, I did a week in the UK. I brought a load of the Swedish guys over from HQ. We went around and we did an art, I hate the phrase art of the possible, but we did an art of the possible, but we tailored it to each place. So we split it between manufacturers for half of a week and city councils for the other half of the week. And our learnings were as much as theirs. That was the really good thing. It was a real open forum discussion. So rather than go in and say, look what we can do, we actually said, okay, tell me some of your problems, tell me a bit about what you do, and we'll just listen for a little while. And I think the power in just listening is where you can generate the leads and the ideas from. So in the city centre side of things, what we realised is GIS, which is Geospatial Information Systems, I think off the top of my head, is quite a well adopted thing already. Again, I didn't know that. We weren't sure. We believed it's somewhere in the adoption process, but actually GIS platforms are nigh on with every council now. So that ties in really well with some future development work that we've got going on at the moment around geospatial awareness. Right. So we're looking at injecting geospatial awareness into devices in general, but let's say cameras specifically. And that's that understanding of where people are in the world and where they are within the camera, within the scene, and then mapping that. So how does all of that tie together? Well, let's take like a digital twin. So a lot of cities now have a digital twin, and all of a sudden they can map where people are. So a traditional sensor, people counter, might have 30 people standing on top of each other because it's counted 30 people, but it doesn't have any idea where they are once they've left that sensor. A camera, it's dynamic, so we can constantly say, okay, there's somebody there, there's someone there, there's a car 20 meters away. When you map that into a digital twin, the power is immense. And also, we don't then need to send a load of clunky video across a network. We're just sending metadata. So really light bites of information sent over and can paint a real, visual sort of real-time image of the city. So that was one of the things. We found a load of synergies. And then moving across to the manufacturing side, again, we were talking about integration, so machine integration, and the splits between like Node-RED. We can now run Node-RED on the edge of the device, and also OPC UA, the integration side of that is just the possibilities become so much bigger than before. And again, some of these guys, they work with OPC, for argument's sake, in the manufacturing space, work with that every day. That's bread and butter to them. For us, it's quite new. But the fact we can now read and write to OPC UA is a game changer. So immediately, going back to proof of concepts, that was, I need to see this. You've just said something really powerful to me. I now need to see this. Whereas for us, it's like it's another integration, but we need to assess the market in a little way. So so we've got that real split between what is sort of expected and understood currently to but in this industry, in the tech industry, tomorrow's always going to yield something new. So therefore, it is our job to go out and educate and keep banging the drum and almost to force ourselves in front of people to say, look, we're not here to sell. That was the beauty of that meeting or all of those meetings that week. I started every meeting by saying, I've got nothing to sell. I'm just interested in you. And the dynamic in that room was like, okay, I'm now going to be really open and share everything with you. So what do? We learn from that, and then we gear that back up and try and help them.
No, that's interesting to hear. And I guess when you're doing this kind of engagement piece, are you seeing questions being brought up around security as well? Because I think talking
massive.
About cameras, IoT, I think privacy and security do tend to come up. And
100%.
What's the approach that Axis have to this?
It's good that you should say that, because actually one of the in that manufacturing meeting, one of the questions raised was, this is fantastic, but there is no way, shape or form we're going to allow a camera onto a production network. So as much as you can read, write, we aren't going to let you, my sort of IT governance is not going to let that happen. So there's ways. Obviously, what we can do is we can get them to essentially put a broker onto an alternative network that we can access. So we get read access possibly, but that can be the sticking block, is the trust, like device trust. And obviously everything's a zero trust policy these days. So luckily for us, our sort of reputation in the industry helps us, but in manufacturing, we're not, outside of security, inside of manufacturing, we're not as well known a brand. So we're a camera manufacturer. People do their homework, but it's not like talking to people in the security industry where they go, Axis, I know Axis, I trust Axis, And so we are starting again on the trust side of things, and it's an interesting conversation because there's more doors closed than opened, and then I guess we show what can be done, and then we let the internal politics sort of fight themselves out, really. So it definitely is a sobering concept, because you can do anything if you're allowed to, and if we're not allowed to, we simply can't.
And I think we've run into situations as well where, especially if it's sort of a POC or initial pilot, the whole solution needs to be off the corporate network. So you're almost setting up a parallel network to do everything and keeping it off the corporate network, and you're still trying to then get all the data presented to the end user. And there's cost implications, but it's something that we just have to build in when we're kind of pricing these projects at the early stage. I think it's all very fascinating. I mean, to me, what do you think would be, because we're all about partner enablement, and our goal is really to get our channel partners to be able to kind of go out there and put these amazing solutions into their end user environments. There's a whole sort of diverse range of skill sets in the partner network. So I think when you're looking at these channel partners and your reseller partners, what is the sort of message you want to give them? How can they kind of start on this journey from your perspective?
Well, again, this is something I'm pleased you brought up, because I would be so sad if I'd missed this. For us, we want new partners, but we want partners from the sort of IoT space. We want people that haven't previously used cameras as sensors or necessarily software as sensors to approach us, and we'll hold your hand. We will help as much as humanly possible. We've got a really good, we call it the AEC, the Access Experience Centre, based in Luton, and that's a really good, so what you see is what you get, like a really visual understanding of what we can do. But there's nothing better than just that initial meeting around, give us a problem, and then we can talk around that, because I guess it's changing the concept. It's understanding that if you position a camera as a sensor, then the value is in the data. So again, it's what can we do with the data that we can generate to help you, and that's where some of the newer inquiries are coming from. And if we get one of those inquiries, it's always me that's getting mega excited about that, because that is where we want to go. I genuinely see the pendulum of, like, we're seen as a security manufacturer now. Honestly, 5 years time, I think it'll be either right in the middle or possibly further over into that sort of IoT sensor space, just because of what we're doing in terms of that additional value that we can bring.
No, that does sound like, that definitely sounds like the trajectory that you're on. And I know you mentioned kind of experience center there, and what we've found is, we've set up our own sort of, we call it center of excellence across the 4th floor of this very building, and we have a experience room within that, where what we tend to do is kind of set up some elaborate demos depending on the customer that's coming to visit us. Yeah. And we actually used to have one, or we had set one up for one of our customers, which was a connection of sort of a vaping sensor with sort of a Halo. I think it was the Halo 3C was the vape sensor, and then we used really the Axis. I think it was strobe light, siren, and a camera, and there was a few different things that were going on. So if you did certain actions, it'll take a short recording, or it'll set off the siren. And what we find is, having sort of customers experience it and see it working, even if it's just in a sort of a controlled environment, helps bring some of it to life, because otherwise there's so many words you're throwing at them and they might only be catching some of it. So, I mean, is that kind of the approach that you also take 100%. When it comes to some of that?
I coined a phrase a little while back, and I built an entire presentation around it, and to be honest, I've dined out probably for the last year on it, but I used if this then what. And I said in meetings, if you take nothing else away, just take if this, then what. And essentially that means if this, so if something happens within the eyeball, the scene, then what do you want to do about it? Because actually the power is in what you do. If you passively monitor a scene, there's no real value. But if you say, okay, if somebody walked onto the production line, let's now talk via OPC8 to shut that machine down. Okay, that's quite powerful. Could help save a life in the long run. That's pretty useful. If this, so if somebody walked walked into a shop, for argument's sake, then what? Then we can have, let's say, a speaker with a PIR sensor, and it greets you, welcome to Shop X. I don't know which shop you use, but you get the drift. The power is actually in the story around what you do. So if this, then what? Tell me any single scenario you look at, that question should flash through your mind, and that's how you start to build that IoT solution, because usually, if this means we need to talk to another device to do something about it. It could be that if I turned up into your reception, if this recognizes me, pings an email directly to you, say I'm loitering in reception or I'm in reception already. So it's the ability to reach out and touch other systems, not just the Axis sort of ecosystem, if you like.
Yeah, that's a difference, right, between just monitoring and automation. Because we've seen where we've done projects where, a user might really be excited, or we want all this data to be presented to us. But then when you think about the day-to-day, who's actually looking at that data? Who's actually, making the decision of what needs to be done? And I think if you can just set up a series of simple alerts or, device interactions, it helps them really bring that use case to life and drive the outcome that they want to drive. So for us, I think automation's become quite a big pillar of what we do. When we talk about automation, we're referring to both kind of process automation, like traditional RPA, but also some of the newer stuff around like agentic AI and being able to kind of leverage data points from different devices, make decisions in real time, and then execute those decisions as well. Sometimes with human in the loop if necessary. I think the other side of it as well is, I think, with all of the evolution we're seeing in the AI landscape, we've traditionally, we always had kind of computer vision solutions of kind of using cameras to pick things up. And now I think there's solutions where once you get all of that data in, you can almost speak to the data and understand it. And I think all of the AI and data analytics is suddenly making IoT a lot more, I would say, useful, because you're not just being drowned in a lot of data. You actually, if anything, you're receiving insights, if not actions that are being executed.
And it's got to be consumable, and I guess that's why, almost sort of every few months there'll be a new integration platform. So obviously the newest for us being OPC UA, but we've got Node-RED, MQTT, Vapix, which is our own, but it essentially allows you to program in any particular language you want. You've got Docker, which then can convert that. So it's all about protocols and conversions around how you consume that data from the back of the camera. And again, it's there, we want people to use it, and I guess that's the story at the minute. And if I go somewhere and I see that, there's if I dare even use old school setup, cameras on walls, not really doing anything else, I will always challenge that a little bit more and say, you're sitting on so much data there. What, could that empower you to do something differently? Because we're of an age where people need to be asking that question, and people can be measured on the success of what they do around, putting measures in place to improve their processes. So we're there to help, and like I say, the data plays the fundamental part of that, really.
And you've kind of alluded to sort of this Axis roadmap. Is there anything exciting that's coming that you're allowed to speak about?
Yeah, I mean,
in the near future?
the big one is I think I've already discussed a little bit, but the geospatial awareness is.
Right.
I mean, again, I've got a bit of a presentation, but in a nutshell, that is really going to be groundbreaking. So to give you some visual ideas of what that could mean, we picture a PTZ camera, so pan tilt zoom camera. Imagine overlay street maps onto there. So all of a sudden, an operator who's unfamiliar with the area spins a camera around, they can see building names, street names, and dynamically change. So if I walk over the top of the text, it's clear. You can still see it's me. It's still sort of forensically usable evidence, if you like. So there's that particular piece is giant in terms of that's one use case. Obviously, the overlay of the maps. Imagine a motorway, every single car has its geolocation. So from there, we know if there's been an incident. Imagine we're getting almost touching on like an automated 999 or emergency services call. So the camera detects a crash, then all of a sudden the crash location is shared with emergency services and we can get someone out of the scene. I use this in a fire example. So we've got a thermal camera, for argument's sake, picks up a building fire. Instead of having somebody need to notice that, it's already put the emergency services call in. Now, this is I'm talking a little future, but I'm not talking miles down the line here. I'm talking next few years. This should be probably bread and butter, really. So we're definitely, I think this is going to be a real game changer in terms of, since my time at Axis, this is the most exciting thing I've seen. And it's just adding the depth into the picture. So no longer are we looking at a bunch of pixels, that they mean something now, and the camera knows where it is, it knows its orientation. That's really good just in a generic mapping sense as well. So a lot of VMS, video management platforms, have had mapping for some years now, and it's, they change it to dynamic mapping to try and keep it up to date. But when your camera knows where it is, it'll update the map itself. So in a lot of town councils, they'll move cameras around quite often to fly tipping, for example, to kind of chase the problem. So if you move the camera, it already knows where it is. It knows its moved location. Your map's updated. And then, again, you can report on that. So fly tipping can be an immediate, okay, at this location, something's appeared because it's a left object. It's a really quite a basic example of an analytic for us really now. But we say, okay, something's there. Let's say we'll use license plate recognition. So, okay, now we understand the number plate, the time that happened, we've got all this information wrapped up as data sitting on the edge of the camera, and then it's about what we do with that.
Yeah,
So
that is very exciting. So, because it's not just video, then there's a lot of intelligence that
definitely.
you're giving. You're not just saying, here's a piece of footage. You actually, you've got location, you've got mapping information, what's actually happening.
And again, it takes the sort of human load. And I think the big thing, again, referring back to the emergency services, it's the speed. So it may take, if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 cars have an accident, and actually it takes another 6 minutes before the next car comes. That's 6 minutes of somebody's life you've just cost. If that's an automated process, that's an immediate, we've got the best possible chance. So whilst we would never term, and I've got to be really clear, would never term our devices as life-saving devices, because you can have latency, you can have network issues, you could have a firmware failure. There's a multitude of reasons that we couldn't be a life-saving device, but these are measures that you'd rather were in place than not.
It's almost a backup, right?
Exactly.
So at least you've got that in the background that can potentially, help someone in that sort of situation.
Correct. The other thing you will see, without a shadow of a doubt, and I'm not privy to this amount of roadmap this far, but certainly sensors, the cat's out the bag really in how we're looking at the sensor world. So Axis cameras, but actually Axis audio is absolutely huge. And our audio, and I'm not just saying this because I work for Axis, it's really, really powerful, really intelligent. Essentially, it's an entire system. So you buy one speaker and the whole operating system is on the edge. So you can communicate with that. You can program it to respond. And so it's an IOT speaker. Let's say, if you need to put a message out based on anything, a third-party camera system, for argument's sake, just reach by HTTP or whatever language you're comfortable. So we're producing sensors that can be used in anything, not just in a security sense. You mentioned the strobe siren. Another fun. Who knew the world needed an IP light so badly? But we released that, and the amount of use cases that we learned about immediately. People say, "Oh, the obvious one, okay, when I'm waiting with a barrier, I want to see it go green. That's the sort of use case, the security part of us things. But then we've got hospitals saying, okay, well, we want like these outside of wards so that if it goes red, it means a nurse has to go in. And certainly on the back of COVID, you can understand why there's caution around not just going straight into rooms if you don't need to. And that's just to mention a few. There are thousands of applications. So you will see more sensors, not necessarily cameras, definitely. And again, it's going to be about how we remain open as well. I think that the idea is that we have to retain that openness and that ability to sort of coexist in a IoT environment, really.
Right. No, that does sound pretty cool. And you sort of touched upon this earlier on in our conversation, but when we're talking about a lot of these kind of access devices that are sort of connected and almost, acting like sensors or working with sensors, how does the software side of this look like? So there's obviously the end user application that might be a different application where the data is flowing through. But from Access's perspective, what does the software side look like, and how does sort of the licensing work? If that is something that we can cover on a conversation.
And it is definitely worth covering as well. So we've got our own sort of VMS video management platform. It's as good as as it needs to be. It's absolutely fantastic. In an IoT environment, the VMS play, and this is cross-board, this isn't just Access, the VMS plays rather the function of the host of the video footage. Yes, there's a lot of intelligence, and I'd be doing a disservice to say there's not. But actually, what we often see is there's a middleware application in here, or there's another, let's use GIS for argument's sake. There's another application that churns the data and uses it differently. So really for us, I think that the real importance is to keep producing data at the edge. So for us, it's the camera does the heavy lifting. There's some, the firepower and the processes are some of the best in the industry for a reason, because we know that data needs to come straight from the camera and get, pointed to where it needs to go, and it doesn't necessarily need to come to us. I mean, we can house the data, but what we do with it, usually, if it's going to be in an IoT environment, would then be another application. So if it's going to be somebody's mobile phone telling them, I don't know, I'm trying to think like a park, and let's say it's connected to a smart parking system. So all of a sudden, we aren't a smart parking company. We don't want to be a smart parking company, but what we can do is give the data that somebody's gone through a barrier, give them the registration, the time, the date. We can give all the information that you need. So then somebody comes along and takes our data, puts it in their platform, and there's the application. So that's where we sit. We've got to have that openness, and we've got to have that edge data.
Awesome. So not to put you on the spot, but just
putting
you on the spot a little bit. So if someone wanted to say tomorrow, what they want to do is they want to maybe buy the strobe light or the siren, and maybe they just want to buy one of them to test it, and they want to set it up with some other devices and build some use case. And so far, let's say in that use case, there's no Access camera involved yet, right? They're just looking at one of these, you could call it like an accessory device, and building it into their IoT solution ecosystem. What do they need? So, I mean, physically, they obviously need the device and the hardware.
So, and this is great. Essentially, every device we do is and I'm going to do somebody in Sweden a real justice here, a small, friendly Linux box. And that's, I've heard that so many times when I'm in meetings with them, but he's right. Our devices are small, friendly Linux boxes. So you can, any single device, you don't necessarily need to then go and get some software and set up a server. You just plug a cable in, you put the IP in, we've got an access tool that will tell you the devices on your network, how to connect to it. Once you connect, you're presented with an interface, and therefore you can start and build from there. Wow. And it's quite an intuitive interface. I mean, I'm not technical, I don't go into program and things like that, but I can work my way around and I can see where exactly things need to be. I'll use MQTT, for example. It's all on board. So if I bought a speaker, I plug it in, I put the IP address, and I can immediately add MQTT brokers and put addresses and things in. So all of that is just available. It's really not something where you need to then suss out how to use. It's quite intuitive. It really is. And if it's not, I've got to put on record, we've got sales engineer support who, this is where we want to be. We want to have these conversations with people. So I'd rather somebody rang me to talk about it than just got on with it. But credit them. It is perfectly doable just to get on with it.
And that is very refreshing to hear as well, because I think one of the challenges that partners can have in the IoT space is certainly if you're looking to buy just one piece of hardware, then you kind of need to buy into the whole ecosystem to get that one piece working. And sometimes having that one piece of hardware be more easily available is actually I guess it's more of an enabler for them to then buy into the larger
Yeah.
ecosystem, because it's something that they can try out and use, and then I guess be interested into other devices and solutions
Yeah.
that you have on offer. So it's really nice to hear that,
Well,
it is easy to get started.
It's honestly, I go back. I mean, it was Axis's 40th birthday last year, I think. And you look at that and you think, okay, we've had 40 years of open protocol, and that's what's kept us relevant in this, and more so than ever, today in the IoT world. But over those years, you've seen, and I remember, I'm 10, 15 years into the security industry now. I still remember, and it's still out there, the closed protocol side. So it's okay, buy our camera, but it will not work. Or what you genuinely see is actually buy our camera, but it's got limited features unless you use. That's not, it's almost sort of hostage by device. It's really, really not something we want to get in. All of the functionality available that device is achievable is available off the shelf, and I think that's a really good point, because you can get into that where you buy something and think, oh, now I've got to buy the associated switch because it only works. Or, you just need that openness. You have to have that openness.
Yeah. No, I really love that term, hostage by device. And
I
I
just
think,
made it up. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's very true in the IoT world, right?
Yeah.
So I think, you and I, we're clearly passionate about all of this, and we can probably, talk about this all day.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of cover today, or you wanted to kind of talk about?
I mean, just really about the, we've got a strong presence in the UK, and it's more for me is talk to us. The worst thing that can happen is we say, sorry, I don't think we can support that, or we can't help with that. But actually, more times than not, it leads onto something in the education piece. So for us, it's just, we're a friendly team. We just want these conversations. We are as interested as the end users in making successful projects. So for us, it's just we're open, we're here, and we're quite happy to support where we can, really.
And that is a great message. Anyone that's looking to get started, all they have to do is just reach out, and Ingram Access, we're all here to kind of support them and get them started, and also point them in the right direction of maybe where they need to start off.
Yep.
So thanks very much for your time, Jeff.
No, appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure kind of talking
really
all
good,
of this. I'm
really
sure
good
we'll
chat.
get maybe another chance to catch up. Maybe when some of the GIS stuff comes out.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
we
Actually,
can
I'd love to come back and show you that.
Awesome.
So yeah, sounds
Thank
good.
you very much.
Appreciate your time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks.